Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yes.
Welcome everyone to the webinar with Julien Beaugnon. I know it's a cool opening. I had to do it that way. I just thought it was so cool. So I just have to stop it in the background here. Hang on. There we go. And welcome again. So this is Wendy Murdoch, and today my guest is Julien Beaugnon, who is formerly of Cavalia. And he sent me that video, and I just thought I absolutely had to open with it. It was so fabulous. So as you enter, just to make sure that you can hear the sound, everything's good, just type in the comments in the chat line where you're from. And if you have any questions, please put them there, and I'll ask Julien as we go along. So Julien, that was so cool. And you know what my favorite part is? I remember seeing that performance live at Crystal City in DC.
Right.
Or Pentagon City.
10 years ago, I think, or something like that. It was actually my
and
first
I still, the Roman riding and the trick riding is still my favorite part. I just
they were very fun. Really fun to do. Yeah. No, it was great. It's been a very nice experience.
Yeah. So Julien, a lot of people probably don't know who you are. So what I'd like you to do, if you don't mind, is just give us a little background, like where you're from, how you got started in all this, like, you know, I'm really curious about that.
So I'm from France, as my accent can let people guess easily. I'm from France. I've been riding horses my entire life. My dad was already horse riders, and then with my brothers, I have 3 brothers, we all ride horses. So we grew up on a farm with horses, and we've been around horses our entire life. I studied in school, passed a business degree, then decided to run for the circus, and then I started my career as a stunt. At first.
How old were you when you ran away to the circus, which we all wanted to do, of course?
So I was about 16 when I started professionally.
Okay.
Yeah. I was about 16 years old, but parallel, I was keep going at school. And I think it's about like when I was 19 or 20 years old, I just totally dropped school and just focus on horses. So
you joined, what circus did you join?
At first, I worked for different small companies in France, like little touring shows. Then after that, I started to work for more, so for bigger parks, including.
Oops, you broke it up just a little.
And a Western theme park. Yeah, sorry?
You broke up just a little. Just say where you started again.
So I studied in different theme parks, and one of them was La Mer de Sable, which is very close to Paris. Is a cowboy and Indians theme park. And then after that, I started to work for Disneyland Paris and movies. And from there, Cavalia contacted me and I decided to join the tour.
So what year did you join Cavalia?
I joined the show in 2008. Yeah.
Okay. So let's see if it was, I think it was 11 years ago, the show was here. So that would have been, so you wouldn't have been there very long.
No, actually, Washington, D.C. was my first city with Cavalia. So I started in Washington, D.C. And then from then we stayed about 3 or 4 years in the US, Canada, and Mexico. And then we moved to Asia and Australia.
So you've been around the world with this show?
Yes. Yeah, we've been traveling a lot. It was a lot of fun.
Do you know how many performances you did?
Oh, no. I worked for them for like about 10 years and we have 7 shows a week.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
So,
and so is it 7 days a week? No, you got a day off, right?
We had 1 day off. So it's 6 shows, 6 days a week, 7 shows, 2 on a Saturday. And we have, so we stay about like between 6 and 8 weeks in a city. And after that, we moved the big top to another city. And then during that transition period of time, horses and performers have a break.
So how many horses did you have in the show?
There were about 50 horses on tour.
And were they horses? I mean, where'd you get the horses from? What kind of horses?
So horses, we actually really get horses everywhere we can along the road as we need. Cavalia is a great company, like they really take care of the horses very well. So fortunately we didn't have to replace horses, but some of them was getting old. And then we bought a couple of them in Australia, of course, Canada and the US. Few of them come from Europe also.
Wow. So okay, I'm sure everybody's wondering, you know, like people always glorify what it's like to be a performer or to be on the road. I mean, I know with people always say to me, wow, you must, it must be great going to all these places. And I see a lot of arenas and horses and dust and sun, and I don't get to see a lot of other things. So I'm kind of curious what your experience was like traveling, and whether that was similar, or whether you actually got to have some fun and like go out and socialize and go on the town at night.
It's pretty much the same thing than you, because we work 6 days a week. So of course the seventh, we're just so tired and we don't really do anything. So we don't have much time to visit the city by itself and just have fun. We work a lot. We start very early and then we finish around 11:30 or midnight. So they are very, very long days. But we have those kind of like mini vacation every 8 weeks, which give us the opportunity to visit a bit of the country where we are.
Yeah. So, so like, did you also take care of the horses, or did you have a whole crew that just took care of the horses and you trained them?
Now we were very lucky. We had an army of grooms. We had about 15 or 20 grooms for 50 horses, which is a lot of people. So now we didn't have to take care of the horses really. Our main focus was just training horses and increasing the performance and the level of the show.
All right. So now I'm sure people are curious about the training. And what it was like, like how you got started with the training, what your concepts of training are. Just give us some ideas there.
So there's few things to me were very important when it comes to train horses. First of all, is like taking the time. Second is respecting the natural ability of horses to analyze the situation and being able to remember what we ask for them. I see very often people trying to rush things, and to me, laying some very good base, some very good foundation is the first step that everyone should take. And this is what we really try at Cavalia. All of our horses were doing dressage, jumping, liberty, all of them. Of course, we use some for very specific act, but all horses are different discipline that you can practice and getting good at.
So, I mean, there's a lot of people actually for me, one of the first circuses that I ever saw where I saw the training was Circus Cagny in Switzerland. I don't know. Are you familiar with them?
I never heard of them.
Oh, really? Circus Cagny is like a national treasure in Switzerland. It was 75 years old when I was there back in the 90s. So it was started by Freddie Cagny before World War II. And during World War II, they took all the mares and geldings. So after that, he only had stallions, so they couldn't steal his horses for the war. But it was really fun because the training was all open to the public and everybody can go and watch. And Freddie's training philosophy was always with kindness and education. And so that was something that I really, really appreciated, watching his training and understanding what they were doing. So it sounds to me like this is similar, that you need to make sure that the horses are happy and it's positive and that they understand what they're doing rather than just being told what to do.
No, it's definitely very important, but also when you perform that often for that long, of course, we have few horses, we have few backup horses if any one of them was getting too tired or sore or injured. But when you perform that often with that kind of freedom, you need to leave your horse a space to tell you what he wants to do that day. And there is some day where the horses were more expressive, more dynamic, and then we were playing with that. And some day where they were more slow and tired, and then we also have to play with that. We never had to force our horses to please whoever the producer of the show or the audience. So it was really just an interaction and trying to get the best of whatever the horse want to do that day without sacrificing on a performance.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And I think that's one of the things that really came across in the performance was that I just remember it being fun, just fun, watching you guys. And, I still get chills when I think about it. I remember the jumping over the pole that the guys were holding. And I still get chills thinking about that performance.
Yeah, it's very interesting because there's a lot of different disciplines, and every riders and every horses, as I said, was pluridisciplinary. So we're all doing different things. We're all doing a bit of dressage, a bit of liberty, a bit of everything. But the atmosphere, the general idea that you get from the audience, it's exactly the reflection of what is happening backstage. Meaning that every I work for many companies, and the reason for I stayed 10 years for Cavalia is because all the respect that you can witness from the audience on stage, it's the same than we have backstage. So we never we never had to force our horses. We never had to push too hard. Uh, it was really respectful. It was a beautiful company.
Yeah, no, it's really quite. And Frederic was, well, did he start Cavalia, or you trained with him at that point, right?
No, I arrived just after Frederic left. So Frederic Pignon and Norman Latourelle was the two founder and creator of the show, among a big list of choreographer and directors and everything. But they're the two founders of the show, Frederic Pignon and Norman Latourelle, the producer. Then he stayed, I think, for about like 5 or 6 years and left the show to start new project. And that's where I came in the picture.
Oh, okay. So were you the head trainer?
For Liberty, yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. So tell us about Liberty training, like how you would how you start a horse, or what's the keys to Liberty training the way you were doing it?
The way that I like to do it is really taking my time, as I said before, laying some very good foundation, being able to recognize every answer that a horse offer to me, and making sure that I don't take it for granted. Meaning that everything that I do with my horse, first of all, I always try to attract them to me before to start to creating distance. So I'm going to try to attract the shoulder towards me. I'm going to try to attract the hips toward me, then the entire body of the horse. And before to put distance, before to send him away, I want to make sure that I can keep him relaxed and safe around me. And that's really what I try to focus. Then also, to avoid frustration, I think it's very important to take our times and making sure that we give the horses the time to process the information.
So I remember you did a workshop here in Virginia, because I'm fortunate enough that Julien lives not far from me at all. Actually, you're probably about an hour away, maybe an hour and a half. You did a workshop in Flint Hill,
Yes.
at Hidden High Meadow. And it was so fascinating to watch you, because I've seen other Liberty work, but most all the Liberty work that I've seen has worked on driving the horse, coming in from the hindquarters and driving. And I'll never forget that you did that, and you did it like once or twice, and then you went, okay, that's done. And you went to the shoulder, and you started working from the shoulder and just asking the horse to take a step over from the shoulder. And didn't matter which way he went, didn't matter which shoulder you touched, but just the idea of moving from the shoulder. I was so struck by that, that I had to run back home. Fortunately, it was close enough. And I grabbed Sharon Wilsey's book, because, because as soon as I saw you do that, I was like, as soon as I saw you do that, I knew that what you were working on was something that was innate to the horse, that it wasn't something you taught the horse, but something the horse already recognized as meaningful, because it happened so fast. I mean, it was like in seconds, these horses were with you. And so I ran home and I grabbed Sharon's book, and I came back and I looked at her book, and she talked about the follow me button on the shoulder. And it was about the same area where you had touched with the whip. And it just struck me so strongly that most everybody worries about the rear end and driving the horse, but very few people actually say, hey, come with me, like it's cool, like let's do this together. And the horses were with you so fast. It just blew me away. I just remember that as such a striking moment.
There is to me, there's few things. I'm not saying that I have all the key. I'm just keep experimenting and keep trying, and maybe in a few years from now, we just realize that I'm wrong. But so far, what I'm trying to do is not disengage the hips, because I'm also a dressage rider, and I figure, like a lot of people, then the horse is well balanced, where his weight is mostly on his back legs. So every time that I'm going to try to attract my horse toward me by drifting the hips away, then not only I'm creating imbalance to my horse, but I also teach my horse to like move away from pressure. My point is trying to bring my horse to come toward the pressure. The pressure is not have to be something hard or something difficult or something painful. When I'm talking about pressure, I'm just talking like about a slight touch of my dressage stick on the shoulder, exactly like the hand of a friend would be on your shoulder when you walk down the street and being like, okay, let's move on together. Let's move on as one. And this is really something I'm trying to have. One of the beautiful things by walking that way is like if you walk with several horses in the same times, you can get the attention to only one and not the others, which is great for performance purposes. Also, I tried for a very long time to ask my horses to arrive collected and beautiful and ready to rear up. I realized that every time that I was adjusting those hips away from me, I was told before, my horses, them rear up was always uncoordinated. They could not keep it for long, and it does complete sense. It makes complete sense. Like if you drive those hips, then your horse arrive with all his weight on the shoulder, and you cannot ask your horse to elevate and hold that position for a long time because already it's not in a good position
Well,
for it.
and this is one of the things when I watched the horsemanship and they kept talking about disengaging the hindquarters. One of the things I know is that my favorite book, it's called Understanding Equitation by Jean Saint-Fort-Paillard, another Frenchman. And he would talk about that engagement is anytime the hind leg comes under the body, and disengagement is anytime the hind leg went behind the body. And it's a question of quality, whether it's good engagement or poor engagement, how far under the body it steps, is it into the print, over the print, or not into the print of the front foot. But this whole idea that I want my horse's rear end engaged so that he has lifting power because he has to carry me. I was always confused by this A term of disengagement, which didn't make sense. And B, why would I want to take the drive out of my horse when I want my horse to be able to collect? And he's got to be able to sit down to collect. And more recently, what I've found, because this has become a popularized idea now for quite a while, is that the horses just grind down into the front end, and then we can't get the thoracic sling engaged and get the withers up. So, when we think about the end result, and I think this is one of the things that a lot of people, if they haven't trained a horse all the way through, that they don't have the end result in mind. So they're not sure what the training they're doing at the beginning, how that's going to play out in the end, and what things they might have to resolve or retrain because of what they did in the beginning.
I'm agree. Really often I see people who spend a lot of time on the ground with them horses doing different kind of training. And then after that, when they start to ride them horses, they find themselves that them horses move their hips very easily, but then the shoulder become like really stuck into the ground, which can lead to a lot of difficulty when you come to collecting your horse or just jump very basic jumps. And there is also something that I find interesting. Like really often we talk about positive reinforcement, and I'm not really sure where I stand about yet, but every time that I touch my horse, if I ask him to move away from the pressure, so I touch the hip, you move away from the stick. I touch the shoulder, you move away from the pressure again. To me, it does make sense. And one day, if your horse starts to get anxious and nervous or focusing on something that you never seen before, the first thing that you want to do is moving away from that. It makes sense because we've been telling them all the time, if I touch you with my stick, you move away. I touch, you move. I touch, you move. So positive reinforcement, I would like to go and dig a bit more and dive a bit more into it to really understand what those people trying to say about positive reinforcement. Is it, if you do something good, I give you a treat? Is that positive reinforcement? Yes, I think it is. But if I touch my horse and he move away, it's not really positive reinforcement because I just positively reinforcing to go away from whatever is creating anxiety. And I might be wrong, but so far it's the way that I walk, and it works very great. I can bring almost every horses on stage with like 2,000 people, live music, projections, lights and water and everything you can. And we do not have to desensitize our horses to all of that. And that's a great thing, especially when you're a traveling show.
You bring up so many points just there. I want to kind of parse this down a little bit. We'll talk about the reinforcement because basically, as I understand it, when you're positive and negative is a question of whether you add or take away. So positive reinforcement is when you add something, and negative reinforcement is when you take it away. So like if I take away your food bowl, it's negative reinforcement.
Right.
And then there's two parts to that. I forget it now. The problem with those words is I always have to go back and look up the meanings again. And maybe somebody can put in the chat the difference between positive and negative. Oh, that's right. There's positive and negative reinforcement and punishment. So positive is adding, negative is taking away, and then reinforcement is one side and then punishment is the other side. But the words get so confusing. But before we get to that one, I want to talk to you about desensitizing, because I hear people talk about, oh, I want to desensitize my horse. And personally, the last thing I want to do is make my horse insensitive. I actually want to educate my horse so that he can evaluate a situation and determine that he is safe and it's okay. I don't want him to just tolerate it. So talk a bit about desensitizing and what your perspective is.
I think it's very dangerous when we start to talk about desensitizing a horse for exactly the same reason. And you, first of all, because I think horses should be alert. I think we have a friend in common, Lucinda.
Oh, Lucinda Green.
Yes.
Not Lucinda Green, Lucinda Baker. Sorry, there's no Lucinda Green. Lucinda in Oregon.
Yeah, she was telling me a story. She told me that she was on a trail ride and she tried to cross a trail or something like that. And then the horse didn't want to go anywhere and she started to push it. And she realized that there's a snake on the middle of the trail and she haven't seen the horse yet. So desensitizing a horse at that point that is not scared of anything, I think it's an issue. I think we should leave our horses being aware of them surrounding. I think a horse who is aware of his surroundings is a safer horse. And I also think that sometimes if we start to fall into that trap of desensitizing to everything, then there is no end to it. If you start to desensitize your horse to green car, then the next day you have to do it with yellow car. And then after that, you have to do it with red motorcycle. And you have to do it like with every single thing. So why can we not find a way to follow our horses and help them to just go through all those different things instead of like breaking it down for them and make everything become a huge deal?
I couldn't agree with you more. And so the way I think about it, and it's interesting because I was at Lucinda Baker's with Stephen Peters and Sharon Wilsey actually a year ago, Memorial Day weekend. And I like to think about it from a perspective of education, and that if I teach you one thing and then I teach you something else, I also help you be able to make the connections. Like, this is a pen and this is a pen. They might look totally different, but they're both pens. You can write with them. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I want my horse to be able to make associations rather than, act blindly, ignore it, or it's not there, or, I can't see it, or I'm not going to, that's the way I think about it, is to have the curiosity to investigate and find out it's safe and okay, rather than be afraid or, denying, like in
Absolutely.
A state of freeze.
And that's why, to me, always touching our horses with our leg and wanting them to move away from the touching our horses with a stick and want them to move away from that. Just encourage this behavior. That if there is something unknown, something strange, then you have to move away, because we set them that way. And then that's why I'm trying to, I touch the right shoulder to have the horse coming with his right shoulder towards me. I touch the left because I want the horse coming to, and then I find that, very effective.
Yeah, well, that was, when I watched you, it was so rapid that the horses were with you. And then the other thing that was really fascinating, and this is something that I wanted to talk about too, is that there were other people there that had done different types of liberty training with their horses. And to the uneducated eye, someone might say, oh, that person's liberty training is great because there's nothing on the horse and the horse is with them. But what became so obvious watching you was that the horse, I don't know how to put it. It's not that he wasn't happy, and happy is a really tough word to put with horses. But, when they got the opportunity, they left their person. And when they got the opportunity with you, they they could go, but they came back. And then they chose to stay with you. So, that it's hard for the uneducated person to be able to discern the difference between quality liberty work that's done in a way that's positive and liberty work that's more, less choice by the horse, I guess, is probably, and maybe you can talk about that and do a better job than I'm doing.
Well, I think what you're trying to say is, like, sometimes when you see people practicing in liberty, you see the horses take off, and when they take off for real. It can take 15 minutes to get them back. And I had that, and I don't want that to happen on stage anymore. So I decided to really take my time and walk slowly, and once again laying some very good foundation. The reason why is because if you get understood by your horse, and if you walk slowly and give him the time to process the information, then they don't feel trapped. By the fact that they don't feel trapped, they don't need to run away. It's okay to have to lose focus of your horse. I don't know any liberty trainer in the world who will tell you I can keep the focus of my horses 100% all the time, whatever the act I do for whatever the time I want. We all lose our horses. What is interesting is to see the reaction of the horse. If your horse take off when he's not doing the exercise, that means then he understands and he's going to get scored just behind it. And if you start to fall into that trap, once again, if you're alone at home, yeah, you can fix it. But if you are in front of 2,000 people and your horse take off, it's not good. So I prefer to take my time. And this is maybe what I like to call more positive reinforcement, is like, no matter what they do, I'm not going to chase them down. I'm not going to make them run. I'm not going to try to become the alpha or dominant. I still don't know where I stand about all this notion of dominant and alpha. I hope I will figure it out one day. But so far I'm trying really to see like more of a partnership between the horse and I. And that's why even during clinics, when I have like 10 people in the same time, some horses go, but they always stay around us.
So, yeah. And I think again, you bring up a lot of really good points. And so the positive and negative reinforcement and positive and negative punishment comes from the behavior modification world. And it's very much looking at a behavior mod level. Then you have Dr. Peters, whom I kind of align with a bit more, because he talks about brain and the neurochemistry in the brain. And since I'm a scientist by training, that makes sense to me, that when horses, when we learn, and look, none of us give anybody 100% of our attention. I mean, it has to be something really traumatic, like a train is about to hit us, before we're really 100% present, right? So why would we expect our horses to be 100% focused on us when we're not even doing that for them? That's true. We don't give them that kind of attention. We're busy thinking about what's for dinner and what happened in the office, and I got so much time. So there's that piece. But the thing that I keep looking at, and why I always talk more about education, is that when we're learning, we need to have an experience, and we need a way to make the experience meaningful. And so when we study things about the brain, they talk about nerves that fire together, wire together. So you have less than half a second between an action and a response to that action for the nervous system to make the association between the two. And it doesn't matter what the reinforcer is. It could be just cessation. Like you start to do something and I stop asking, and that reinforces and wires it together. Mm-hmm. And to break a habit, you have to stop using it. You can't keep picking up the cigarettes if you're going to quit smoking, right? So in the brain at that point, what's happening is when you give the cessation, the nervous system goes through a process. There's dopamine, that's your lick and chew. But Dr. Peters talks about then if you let them rest longer, you get serotonin. And serotonin is that brain chemical that's the feel-good chemical. It's the one that people take Prozac to have more of, but it's the feel-good chemical. And at that point, you get the dendrites starting to form between the neurons so that you can make greater associations. So when you see similar things, you can say, this is a ball, this is a ball, this is a ball, even if they're different colors and different sizes, you're like, oh, that's all a round shape, that's a ball. And I noticed with your training that there's a lot of pause time, right?
Yes. Once again, it's part of like laying this good foundation. First of all, I find that humans were terrible about body language. We are really, really, really bad. Yeah. And I see a lot of people fidgeting, making like 1,000 different movements to just giving one order to them horses. You take like someone who's going to launch his horse. Of course, you have a lot of people who are very experienced and then everything is clear to them. But if you take the first time someone trying to launch his horse is going to have his shoulder different orientation, is going to fidget, is going to move his arms, is going to move. And all of those movements and recreate are clear indication. They are like full sentences to our horses. So the first thing is like being able to just stay still. And humans, we are terrible at it. We are so bad. We just always like look somewhere, do something, move something, make a noise, touching fast, kissing fast, yelling fast. We never stop. And I think it's something that's just going to get worse and worse with all like, you know, technology and all of that. So being able to really slow down, breaking down all our movement, being unbalanced, even if you're just on your foot. A lot of people are not even balanced on them foot. So they have no balance on them horses, and their horses have no balance. So I like to take really my time. I like to don't move at all. But every time that I move, I want it to be clear, meaningful, and understandable for my horse.
Yeah. We have a question from Lisa, and she says, how long on average does it take to arrive at a level of training such that they trust you in a show environment?
It's going to depend which exercise. I would say like if a horse is like a horse who is used to go on a trail ride, see different environments, see different places, it doesn't really need to take much time. It's going also to depend which exercise you do. If you want to do every exercise is going to ask movement, it goes pretty fast. If you start to go more into lay down and bowing, which is more vulnerable position for the horse, then that might going to take a bit longer.
So do you have a memory of a horse that was particularly difficult to train?
Yes.
Tell us about that horse.
I had some who were I had some who teach me more than others, like every riders, I guess. To me, the worst are the ones who are shut down. Because a horse who's trying to refuse whatever exercise, it's already a horse who's trying to find a solution. Maybe it's not the one I want, but at least he's trying something. The worst to me are the ones who just checked out. They are not here anymore. You can try to do everything that you want. You can walk slowly, you can walk fast, you can walk aggressively or very kindly. Some horses are just not there anymore. And to me, those are the worst. And when you're talking about like, I take my time, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. And that's my way of helping those horses who are shut down and in so much into their own head that they're not aware about them surrounding anymore. Really often we ask our horses to do different exercise, different things, and the answer is not always the one we want. Mm-hmm. True. But it's not because the answer is not the one we want, then we have to push and we have to rush or we have to use strengths because it's an answer already. So if I ask my 3-year-old son to do something for me and do the opposite, I'm not going to slap him on the face. I'm going to thank him and being like, this is not exactly what I want. And that's to me very important for horses. There is nothing that they do wrong. There is some stuff that they don't understand. It's natural for them to answer to a human. So everything they do, we have to take it as a gift and redirect it to better suit our needs.
So in a lot of ways, it sounds like the response you get from the horse is a mirror of what you said. And maybe we need to be clearer, like see that perspective and then figure out how can we be clearer so that their mirroring of our request is what we wanted.
Being clearer, really avoiding working under frustration or anger. I believe that horses and humans are the same about that. We can only learn when we are in that phase in our head, when we're calm and we can receive the information, we can analyze the information, we can treat it and remember it. If we are in stress, if we are in different kind of state of mind, it's really hard to work and remember anything. And once again, to me, like horses don't do anything wrong. It's our job to try to find the best way to explain them that's not what we wanted from them.
Yeah, and it's tough right now because a lot of people are really stressed given the pandemic. Some people can't get to their horses. Some people, when they do get to their horses, are so worried about losing their job, or, you know, there's a lot of stress right now. And I've talked with Laura Plunkett, and we've talked about this a little bit because the animals are reacting to the stress that people are under currently.
And I totally understand that. I would say avoid being around your horse if you cannot control yourself. It seems terrible to say, but it's true. Like I've been a performer for like over 15 years. I know what it is to work under pressure. I know what it is to walk when you think that it's not going, like nothing good's gonna happen at the end of your session. Just take a break and come back maybe the next day. It's the prime of being a rider. It's like we don't walk only with our emotion, but we have to deal with the one of our horses, and our horses don't have to deal with ours.
Yeah, I've been spending a lot of time at the barn, but not necessarily sitting on my horse.
Yeah.
You know, and that's okay. You know, like I'm getting to the barn. For me, that's a big plus, because normally I'm on the road. So at least I'm getting to the barn. I kind of feel like I've accomplished something there. So somebody's asked a question. They say, has a horse ever done something completely different than what you asked, but turned out remarkably well?
Every single time. My job was like to fake that I did it on purpose, but I wasn't. Now, many times, of course, many times when horses are doing things, it's funny because really often, even people who watch the show several times are saying like, oh, that horse is always doing that. And I think it's a trainer who asked him to do that. It's not true at all. No. Sometimes the horses were just doing whatever they wanted to do. And it was our job to smile and look pretty and try to make it sound like it was on purpose. But I think that's the beauty of Liberty, and that's what I really like with Cavalia. The stage, the way that it was designed, the live music, everything was made on purpose to let freedom of movement for the horses and let them taking their own decisions and offer whatever they wanted to do. One of my horses, like the paint horse you can see on the video, his specialty was going on a barricade, which is the little wall between the audience and the stage, right? And then he loved standing up on that thing, but until every single person clapped his hand, he was not coming down. So I had many times I had to ask people to clap more because he was not going down until he get enough claps. I was like, okay.
You know, some people think that horses don't enjoy their job, but I think when a horse has the job they really like, they really enjoy it, and so I think in that case he really enjoyed what he was doing.
Yes, and there's a story like that of a guy who teaches his horse how to count.
Oh yeah, clever Hans. Yeah.
But actually, the horse didn't know how to count. It just it was able to feel the energy of the audience, and then more they were getting excited, and more it was hitting the ground with his hoof, and then he was stopping when people was at the highest of them excitement, and then everybody thought that the horse could. And I think that performance horses are kind of like the same way. They start to feel the vibe, my energy definitely, the one of the audience for sure, and then they just play with that excitement. And when they're used to the stage enough, then they can just play with that because they know it's safe, and they just offer some very beautiful moments.
Yeah. So I think that you just touched on it, but the feeling safe is probably the absolute key toward the kind of performance that we're talking about. That the horses have to feel safe with the people that they're around.
It's a very vulnerable position for a horse to be laid down, especially like during a solo act, if you see a horse laying down. So one of the acts that I had, and that was a very big challenge, you can see really often people ask them horses to lay down. You can see people doing it on stage. It's a bit more rare when you have, I have 8 dancers who was around me when I was asking my horse to lay down. So like if you have 8 people who they don't know anything about the horses because they're dancers, right? So they dance around that horse and then they make big movement, and then being able to keep him calm with 2,000 people in the audience, 8 dancers around, projection, musics, and all of that, that asks a bit of partnership and trust.
Yeah, absolutely. So was that the hardest thing you've ever asked a horse to do, or is there something else? Like, what's the most difficult thing you ever trained a horse to do?
I think just dealing with me. It's already pretty good for a horse. Good job on them. I don't know what I've been teaching. I mean, I see so many videos and so many. It's pretty basic. Just trying to do whatever I can, but make it clean. That's why I'm taking my time in everything I do. I don't remember if there is one exercise and I asked specifically to my horse, but I was able to witness many times some very beautiful gift that my horses give me, and a lot of generosity in everything they do. And I think this is the hardest thing for me. It's like making sure that I keep always that generosity and that willingness of doing the exercise.
Yeah. So we met, oh, it's only been, what is it, 2 years ago? It was 2 years ago, or Easter. Wasn't that long ago.
No, yeah, true.
Yeah. And Catherine Wyckoff, whom I did a webinar with about Feldenkrais method, introduced us to each other because obviously you speak French and she's from Belgium. So you guys, when I saw you guys speak in your native tongue, it was like, oh, I'm out of here. I don't know any French. But it was really great. She organized so that we could get together so I could show you Surefoot. And I know that you've become a big fan.
Well, as we discussed, like horses need they need to feel safe, and when you travel as much as I do or you do, it's interesting to being what we're trying to do is like recreating the same environment for the horses all the time. And I think that using some whatever equipment or stables or whatever you use to try to create that environment, that cocoon, then the horses feel safe. And Surefoot pad, I think, can be a great help for everyone who travels a lot, because every time that gives them a reference, that gives them something, then they can rely on, something that they know, and that's reassuring. And when your horse is reassuring and safe, then everything becomes possible.
Yeah. And that's, it's so fascinating having created Surefoot. And it's really altered the way I look and think about things over the past 8 years that I've been doing this, because the more and more I do it, the more I realize the horses are just waiting for us to say something that's meaningful and something that's quiet and meaningful to them. And I think you're right. I think we're really, really too busy and we're too, just noisy to them. And when I use the pads, I always get quieter. I notice all the people around me get quieter and the horses get quieter. It's kind of like gets on the same vibe.
But see, the way that you walk and you present, especially when you present for the first time, you pass to the horses. It's the same way than I do, meaning like you don't force, you propose, you offer. Then if it moves around, if it's not perfect, that's okay. And you always say that if you get off of it, it's fine. Just let him walk off, and then you can bring him back on later. And that's exactly the same idea. It's like not forcing, not trying to train horses to do something and like keep them at the same spot. Like you're like, okay, your horse, you need to move, you need to try, you need to feel, you need to make your experience. And I think that's exactly the same minding that we have about that.
Yeah, it's a suggestion and an offer, and I see how they respond. And I think that's the same when I watched you work. It's you give them an idea and you see how they respond, and then it's an interaction, it's a conversation. Yes. It's not there isn't a rote program. And so many people, whether it's training horses or using Surefoot pads, want a very linear step A, B, C, D, so they can follow the steps. But what I keep telling people over and over is, this is how you get started, but you and your horse, your horse is going to show you where you go from here. And it's being present with your horse to respond and to interact. That's really the key, not doing what someone else says, this is how you do it.
And the quest of perfection is so human. Like there's no animal trying to perfect a movement naturally. So if you want to achieve any kind of result to a high level, or to just stand off pads or staying quiet, that's our human way of thinking. So we need to take the time and explain them that there's nothing wrong in what they do. We just, want something more or something different than what they're offering.
Yeah. You have to think like for us, at least in this culture, when I think back to school, you were supposed to sit in your desk, be quiet, listen to the teacher, spit back the right answer, don't disrupt anything. And so this culture of education of rote, teacher tells and you feed back, we've lost the creativity and imagination that really should go along with learning.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. No, completely agree. And yes, you stop that creativity, and you just miss a lot of beautiful moments by doing so. Yeah. And forcing people or forcing horses, I really don't think it's the best way to do it. And you can achieve some very high level of performance by taking the time and using kindness, I believe.
Yeah. So let's see, we have a question. Julien, do you have any plans for a book?
for a book. One day when I will be good enough and and being sure of what I like. What I say today is probably different than what I'm going to say in 2 years from now. That's why when I teach, I just try to give whatever works for me for now, and that's why I always try to say like this is the way that I like to walk. I just think that horses are the master of like make you realize that you don't know anything.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to write a book because sometimes I'm going to walk a certain way, and I've been developing my technique and giving a few tips to people. But this is what I like to tell people when I give clinics. I'm like, I give you my tools, put them into a toolbox, take them out when you need it, but it is not a method. I don't think there is one method. If there were one, we all be reading the same book and we'd be working with everyone and every horses. And there is none. So the only thing I can give is like those few tools that I was able to find or to create and to try, and then people use whatever they want. And
Yeah, you know, way back when I was trying to figure out a name for my company, somebody told me Murdoch Method, and I resisted it for a million years, and finally was like, I can't come up with anything better. But the only method I have is madness. I take everything I want, I chuck it into the pot, I stir it around, and I see what comes out. And sometimes it's great soup, and sometimes it's like, you know, not so great. But I just keep experimenting, and I think that that's a lot of it. For me, my method is madness. So we have another question. I think this is a good question. It says, what kind of reward do you prefer to use to communicate to your horse that they have offered the desired answer for your question or your request?
oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
The best reward is nothing. I realized very quickly that horses love first and foremost safety over everything. If you put on fire, like if you put like a big giant wall of fire, you can put like 50 tons of carrots on the other side. Your horse is not going to cross the fire to go get the carrots because his desire of staying safe and alive is bigger than his desire of eating carrots. So I don't touch, I don't talk. When my horse reply and when my horse answer the way that I want it to do, I trying to find like a very low level of energy of everything. I'm really trying to ground myself. I stop staring at him. I don't touch. I don't make noise. I don't give treats. I just take a moment. I just give them a big, big break. And that's going to go for as long as I feel that the horse is still processing the information. And there's few things, like if you see that he keep his head high and breathing heavily, he's not ready yet to pass to the next exercise. So I always try to make sure that whatever the horse, when he give me a good answer, I just stop right away everything I do. I just stop.
So fascinating, actually, because what I have a really good friend. His name is Bruce Olson. He's in Richmond, and when I met him, he was doing reining horses, and he's also a musician, and he plays the drums and sings. So he's quintidextrous, right?
Okay.
He can do different rhythms, and you know, for him, what he would say is he stops asking as he senses the horse about to do the task. He doesn't even wait for it to finish. He just stops asking. And that he, you know, that is the release. That is the reward. That is the carrot, is the cessation of request.
I couldn't be more agree with that too. To me, it's a very good way of doing things, and it's also a very good way to avoid accident and frustration. Like sometimes, really often I hear people telling me like, my horse is lazy, or my horse don't respond to my leg. That's the kind of things that I hear very often. Or I cannot launch my horse, he's like heavy, I need to whip him several times to just get him to stay on the walk. And to me, if you're able to just ask one step, even if it's just one step, it's not a full circle, you already win. You're already launching your horse. So there is two different ways of doing it. Either you pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing your horse when he was walking to try to get him to trot or to try to get him to canter, which if you find yourself with a very reluctant horse is not going to walk, or you can just stop and thank him for that one step that he took. And then you ask for a second step. And then you ask for a third one. And by being able to follow that process and working, maybe when we were talking earlier about positive reinforcement, so giving them the opportunity to do one step, two step, three step, then at the end of like 30 minutes or 40 minutes, that's done. Your horse launch both hands, walk, trot, and canter. But if you try to push, then you just create resistance. If you create resistance, then you create a fight, and then nothing good comes out of it.
Yeah. So someone's asking, could you share an example of how your approach with the horse applies to your riding?
I don't understand the question.
So we've talked a lot about liberty work.
Yes.
So when you're in the saddle, how do
Yes.
you apply these same ideas when you're in the saddle?
I do for first of all, my philosophy when I'm on the ground or when I'm on my horses are the same. So taking my time, being able to recognize every effort that the horse made, to being able to stop at the right time and don't ask more than what my horse can give. To me, that's very important.
That's a hard one. That's a
Yeah.
really hard one, to not ask more than your horse can give. I think that's one of the hardest things, is to know where that line is.
Especially when you know your horse, because as a clinician, it's always easy, I found, to jump on a horse and make him doing crazy things in front of an audience, because I don't know the horse. So I'm going to stop at the right time. But when you start to know more, you start to know your horse more, you're like, oh, Monday, give me that, Tuesday, give that. And now we are Wednesday. And he should give me at least as much, maybe even more. But no, Wednesday is more tired than it was on Monday and Tuesday. And then this is the moment where you should have stopped. And yes, it might be not as good as the 2 days before, but that was his limit today. So being able to stop there before to start to create frustration and resistance is very important.
Yeah. And that's something that I hear people often say is, well, my horse should know better. Like he's been past that rock 5 times and today he's shying at that rock. He should know better. And I find that that's kind of a common thought, that we think that once we've taught them something, they should know it and they should be able to push the button and have it happen every time. But I'm sure in your performances that it never works out like that.
No, and anyway, it's not something that I wish, but like people trying to say that, it would be like if I get mad at my grandmother because for Christmas she gave me $50 and not 100 like last year. This is absurd. This is ridiculous. If my grandmother gave me $50 this year, I'm already happy for those $50. And I cannot expect to have the same than the year before. Of course, you want to keep a constant with the horse and you want to be on evolutive and keep training, keep performing, and keep increasing the level. But that doesn't mean that that doesn't mean that they owe you that. They don't owe you anything.
Right.
So it's that day. No, there is no such thing that like he should know better. Like, no, today they didn't want to do it. That's okay. Maybe tomorrow is going to give you twice as much if you respect that moment.
Right. And that's the thing I think that is hard for people to understand, that just like people, and I used to take ballroom dancing lessons at the recommendation of Bettina Drummond, actually. Mm-hmm. And I would go, we had the same dance teacher, and he would watch me walk in the door and go, I'm not going to teach her anything new today. We're just going to reinforce what we've done before. Because he could tell the moment I walked in the door, this was not a day to give me something new, and it's that ability to recognize not every day is a day where we're going to advance.
There's funny things about dancers. Like there's a lot of similar point between dancers and horse riders, and I figured that because my wife is a dancer. So yeah. I just realized that everything that she learned about like classical ballet and modern jazz and all those different dance that she learned and she did and now she teach. There's a lot of similar point, but there's stuff were very interesting. My wife, to teach choreography to her students, use the warm-up moment to teach them different movement, but people don't even realize that during the stretching exercise, they actually are doing those warm-up exercises, they actually already start to learn the choreography. And then after 15 or 20 minutes, she's like, okay, now we can do the choreography. And people are like, which choreography? The one that you've been teaching. And I find that very interesting. And with horses, I like to do the same. So I'm going to teach my horses to come and join me on certain commands, certain cue, but they don't even realize it. So what I'm going to do, for instance, I'm going to ask them, I'm going to launch. I'm going to launch my horse, like everyone will launch our horse. But the way that I'm going to call my horses to come back to me and switch direction is a bit different than what other people does, which means that in the end, I just remove the lead rope. And if I start to do the same movement, my horse will just come back to me. I didn't focus on trying to call him and bring him to me. I make him focus on switching direction, but always doing it towards me. And then when you remove the lead rope, your horse already know that cue by heart.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, and it's in some ways, we really have to kind of think through what it is that we want so that we're already teaching that at the baby level. And my example of that is when I taught Pony Club. I taught Pony Club for 6 years with Allie Thurston at Wilton Pony Club, and she kept going. But our little kid, normally little kids, they would just teach them to jump just once around the outside. But with our kids, we taught them at 18 inches how to do all kinds of complex courses so that when they got older, they could jump all the patterns because they'd already done it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I know I have an old friend who was teaching the kids how to fall off from a pony or from a horse. So that way they never be scared. I haven't been that far yet, but I find the concept interesting. If people know how to jump off a horse when they are full speed, of course they're not scared anymore.
Yeah.
Or less.
Well, the hour has flown by, Julien. This has been really, really fascinating. I know that you were doing clinics. Well, right now nobody's doing clinics, but do you plan to go back to doing clinics and workshops?
Yes, I hope so. Right now I'm kind of thankful to having the time to really more focus on my horses, which is great because it's something that I didn't have the time to do before. So I'm here, I walk my horses. And
so where are you?
Great Falls.
You're in Great Falls. What's the name of the stable?
Southdown Farm.
Say it again.
Southdown. That's a very hard one for me to say.
I know.
Down.
Something down. All right, but we can find you on Facebook, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So you can find Julien Beaugnon on Facebook, and when you go back to doing clinics, I'm sure that you'll post those up there on Facebook as well.
Yes, we do, for sure.
I so enjoyed watching you with the clinic that you did, and it was so eye-opening to see such a different perspective, something that people have done for a long time, but doing it in such a different way that for me resonated so strongly with a heartfelt connection that the horses really were respected and had choice. And I keep coming back to this idea of giving horses some choice, and that when we do that, they give us so much more.
I'm agree.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me, Wendy. It was great seeing you.
Thanks everybody for joining us. You can find this and all my other webinars on my YouTube channel, Surefoot Equine. And tomorrow I have Dr. Sybil Mole. We're going to talk about kinesio taping and Surefoot pads. So until then, thank you all for joining me. And thank you, Julien, for being my guest.
Bye-bye.
It's been a pleasure. Great to see you. Maybe I'll see you in person sometime soon.
Bye.
Okay, bye.